So let's get into headcount, because I think a lot of people are always wondering, how many marketers should I have at what stage, of the company, at ARR, you tell me. So how are you looking at the headcount that you think you need at a given time, and what factors are you considering?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I don't have a formula. When I was in ops, I used to have a formula. It was like, hey, every 8 hires you make in marketing, we get 1 ops head. That's easy, and then I get to decide where that goes. But here, I don't know. But here's kind of some of the things that I've been thinking about. Excuse me. Ask for the resources way before you actually think you need them. So that was one of my, I think, Achilles heels, is these people we just hired, I probably could have got approval for a couple of months beforehand. I just didn't really know. And so always be thinking like maybe 25 to 30 to 50% higher than what you actually think. That's negotiating, But in terms of like, what do we actually need? The things I'm looking at is like, our budgets can go way high, but if we don't have the people to spend that money, then it just falls flat. And so that's really where it comes down to, is like, an interesting ratio to look at, I would say, in marketing is if you're around 30 to 40% headcount and the rest program spend and everything else, that's probably a decent, ratio. And so we're kind of in that. So I'm always kind of looking at that ratio. But then when I'm asking for more spend, I also don't really know, like, oh, hey, Jason, to 2.5x the company again this year, how much money do you need? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like, I could be anywhere from $0 to $5 million. Like, we could do one viral post that all of a sudden blows up and we get all kinds of demand for $0, or we can struggle and have to spend $5 million. Like, I have no idea. Gil, don't listen to this, or Jim. But we make it happen, so don't worry. But that's really what I'm trying to think about, is like, we need people to spend the money, and like people to do things. It's really the people in marketing that's like making things happen, even though our impact is a lot bigger, right? So like, we only have 7 people in marketing that's driving $45 million of pipeline, right? And so it's really like, can you extend, each of those people need to be able to extend themselves a little bit further, but you need people to spend the money. And in that program spend, the program spend that's that 70% can still be spent on agencies. So it's still kind of people related, but it's still considered program because it's not headcount. And so we spend a lot of money on people through contract people. And most of them are freelance. We do work with 2 agencies as well on a longer term basis. But, there's certain pieces that you just really have to think pretty hard about where agencies play and where they shouldn't. And it is a little bit like unique. It depends. But here's some things to think about. The first thing is, what information do you actually want to keep really inside your organization? Like, what's the stuff that's really important to like keep that internal knowledge? So in my mind, it's analytics. It's maybe demand gen, like the actual people coming up with the strategy. It's definitely like brand people, but not necessarily the creative producers, but like the people like responsible for the brand. These are the roles that they're really important to how your company shows up. And also the analytics, the reason for that is analysts just stick a lot of data in their brain, and they're just better analysts over time given the same exact data. So you don't want to give that stuff externally, because then it can go away way too easily, and then you're basically starting from scratch. So that's kind of how I think about agencies to begin with. It doesn't mean that you don't have to plug a hole in those areas with agencies still every once in a while, but there should, in my experience, there should always be an internal person that really is there, understands it, knows it in those roles, because the continuity of business is important there. Places where agencies, I think, can really shine: creative. Because when you're really starting out, creative is disciplinarian. That's the worst word. You got video people, you've got people that are good with copy, you've got people that are good with just animations, you've got people that, you know what I mean? So you've got all these different kind of disciplines, producers, editors, and then also the people that are just like coming up with the actual creative ideas. And if you had to hire for each of those people within your org, it could be a lot, you know what I mean? A lot of overhead costs just to get those disciplines right, when a good creative agency can take those concepts. It'll take a couple months, right, to get on board and stuff, like anybody, but that, and creative changes enough where it's like you don't have to have that person inside the company forever, to keep that going. So anyway, I think that's kind of the things around agencies just to think about, And then also I think the last thing on agencies, it should never be a long-term strategy. So like if your strategy is like, we're always going to use agencies in this area, I think that's wrong. Because like an agency, I'm sorry agencies, I love you, an agency will never do as good of a job for you as your own FTE. I mean, just think about it. They're shared with 5 to 10 other clients. They don't get a bonus when you do better. There's just so much. It's not the agency's fault. The agencies are great. They have great people. We work with some great ones. But it's just not a long-term, it shouldn't be anyone's long-term strategy.
So I'm going to push back a little bit, and I would say specifically on creative agencies, because I think having worked at a company that had a really, really badass creative team, they're looking for variety in their work. And I think outside experience and perspective of working with other clients in some ways can bring you better ideas because they're testing things out in other places. So
yeah, that's a good point.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think for us, creative, especially in B2B, and we work with Alger and his agency, we have no problem shouting them out, but you need a fresh perspective. And I think it's easy to get lost in your own, internal creative, thinking, if you will, if you're not looking outside. But I totally agree with everything that you said.